Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sarah Urbiss, and I'm with SAI Programs, and I'm excited to talk with you today about our study abroad opportunities. And I have with me today two SAI alums who I'm going to have introduce themselves now. Annalise?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Annalise. I am currently a junior at the University of Alabama. I study political science and communication studies, and I studied abroad with SAI in Barcelona in spring 2020.
Hi, my name is Brianna Adkins. I am a senior at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, and I am an art education and dance major. I studied abroad with SAI in Florence, Italy, spring 2020 as well.
Great. So that QR code on the screen takes you to the SAI Virtual Fair homepage, so you can access all of our program information and things like that. And as we go along today, I'm going to ask Annalise and Brianna to share some experience and feedback from their own programs. But before I get into that, I wanted to be sure that you have the contact information for the University of Louisville Study Abroad office. It's all on the screen here, their website, their email, their Instagram, so you can be sure to be in touch with them to start planning. So I always like to begin my presentations by talking a little bit about why you might want to study abroad. And if you're watching this, you've hopefully already thought about that a little bit, but like to kind of highlight some of the reports that we hear from students. So most students come back and talk about their personal growth as being the most impactful part of their study abroad experience. So students come back and say that they have become more independent, more self-confident, that they were able to do something new and on their own for the very first time, and that was a very significant part of the study abroad program. But of course, you are there to study, so you can go and take classes for your major, your minor, gen ed type of courses. We have a whole variety of courses taught in English. So you could take something even that may not be offered at University of Louisville on campus and expand on your studies that way. And there's a lot of really cool classes that are focused on Italy or focused on the city of Barcelona, where you can dive deep into that location where you're studying. And then, of course, professionally, when you study abroad, you gain a lot of skills that employers are looking for. So that might be problem solving, creative thinking, flexibility, all of these kind of things while you're building a network with people from across the US and the world as well. So Brianna, what did you get out of your study abroad program?
I think all of those things, but for me, what a big thing was I'm from this area where my college is, so I haven't ever lived anywhere other than this town. So like this was like the first place I really got to take ownership of living in a new place and exploring and finding all these businesses that I really love. And I follow so many businesses on Instagram now, and I like actively follow what they're doing every day because I just want to be eating their food so badly. Um, but generally just the world made more sense to me in Italy. Um, Everything just like matched my soul a lot more, as cheesy as that sounds, and like all of my allergies got better, and just like overall it was a really wonderful experience to me in like ways that I never could have anticipated, because you hear all those things of like you become more independent, which is true, and more able to problem solve. And I got to take two classes that are not offered at my university, and they counted for my major, so that was fantastic. But like the unexpected things were honestly so much life-changing too.
Wonderful. I love it. Thank you. And Elise, what about you?
Yeah, I would definitely say being independent was probably one of the biggest takeaways that I had. I did not know anybody going into it. And so it was kind of like an entirely fresh start. It was my first time ever abroad, ever in Europe. And so I don't know, there were just so many things that I was able to learn just from being in that place. And then academically, there was a lot of growth for me because these courses, like the professors just really poured into the students, and I study political science, so it was really cool to get to study politics, but in a different country as well. So yeah, overall, there are a lot of benefits.
Excellent. So now that we've kind of set the stage, I wanted to explain what is SAI. You might be wondering, like, what does SAI mean? How is that different from University of Louisville? How do we relate? And so SAI stands for Study Abroad Italy. Most of our programs are in Italy, which you'll see in just a minute. But we are a separate study abroad organization. Our whole model and everything that we do is facilitating student enrollment in overseas schools. So our whole team, that's their entire, what they're dedicated to. So we are affiliates with the University of Louisville. So that means we partner so that students can go on our programs. And then our staff, some of whom you see pictured there, will help you before departure, get you enrolled in the program, help set up your housing, help you get your classes picked out, things like that. And then you will go abroad and take classes at a local university in one of our host cities and then transfer that credit back to the university. It's a cohort program with other students from across the US. So it's not like a faculty-led program where you're going with a University of Louisville faculty and all students from UofL. It's going to be a mix of students from across the US. And that's something actually that a lot of our students come back and say that they really loved about the program, that they made friends from students at other universities in the US as well. So if you don't know anyone going on the same program, you will get to know them really well early on in your program. And then, like I said, we have that staff in the US and staff abroad that are there dedicated just to supporting you on the program. Annalise, can you describe your program briefly, kind of the structure and things like that?
Yeah, like how I applied or
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So for me, our school, University of Alabama, offers a lot of different programs abroad. And so I had no idea where I wanted to go or what program that I wanted to go with. And so I ended up reaching out to a lot of different study abroad programs. And SAI really stood out to me because everything that was on their website was super clear to me. They were super quick to respond and really friendly and answered all of my questions. And I had a ton of questions, especially about how to make coursework work abroad as well. And so that's how I ended up choosing SAI. And so I applied through my university and then also through SAI and was able to get everything kind of figured out from there.
Wonderful. Brianna, is there anything you want to share about your process?
I honestly had not a clue what SAI did when I started doing this. I just was like, I would like to go to Florence, so I will do this. But it turned out really, really well. I'm like super glad that they were there and I had someone kind of organizing things, especially because of the pandemic that kind of interrupted everything. They were really helpful in dealing with all of that type of stuff. So they're just a really helpful like backbone to like rely on when you're there and before you go. Like Annalise was saying, they have a lot of resources. I remember reaching out to them for my visa appointment because that was super confusing, and just like asking questions about the program itself. But I didn't know all the like the things I did with housing and insurance and stuff that were really like fundamental things that would have been super confusing to figure out by myself. So I'm definitely glad that they were there.
Glad that you found that helpful. So speaking of some of those support services, these are the services that are included in every program. I won't read through this list, as you can see it on the screen. But in general, what your program is going to include will be the tuition, of course, the credit hours, the housing. We have online student communities before you go, so you can get to know some of those other people who are going to be in your program. We have a full-time staff member who is our student visa director. And so her entire job is to help students figure out the logistics of the visa process if you need one, to help support you in that process, walk you through it. On site, the staff will do cultural activities, excursions, little day trips, different things throughout the city with you, in addition to like being there for general health and safety and emergency support. And then we also have a very kind of robust process and protocols for public health, general health and safety if you get sick and need to go to the doctor, or if there's a larger scale emergency that happens in your country while you're there. So that's a general overview of the support services. Brianna, can you talk a little bit about some of the support services that you utilized or enjoyed?
Well, for me, I definitely did a bunch of the like cultural activities. I did we took a hike up to the Piazza di Michelangelo, and I did a cooking class and a bookmaking workshop, which is all really super cool and fun. And I was really excited for all like the little trips that they had planned. they like showed us around the town and stuff too. My one friend, this wasn't me, but she ended up having to go to the hospital, and she said they were super helpful, and it was super like nice to have someone to help her out there, because otherwise it would have been really confusing and overwhelming, especially when you're already not feeling well. You don't want even more stress on top of that. So I found those resources really helpful.
Wonderful. Yeah, the staff will go, if you need help translating at the doctor or the hospital for sure, they'll be right there with you. Annalise, what about you?
One of my favorite things about the program is the housing, and the housing was awesome. It was honestly a beautiful apartment, way nicer than what I've stayed at here on campus. And so our apartment was right next to Sagrada Familia Cathedral in Barcelona, and so we could see it right out of our window. It was about a 1-minute walk in a perfect area with so much to do around us. So the apartments were definitely one of my favorite parts. And then airport pickup, of course, right when you get into the city, you're kind of nervous and everything, but that made everything super smooth. And then cultural activities, of course, were awesome. I try to do as many of those as possible as well. I got to do a flamenco dance class, and we went to a local family's home to learn how to do ceramics there. And so the cultural activities were great to make sure that you're really getting a local and real experiences abroad.
And I'm glad you brought up the housing too. That's something that, if you have questions about it, you will not set up your own housing. We'll arrange that for you. You will, you can kind of indicate which type of housing you want, or if you have a preferred roommate, that sort of thing. But you will live with other students on the program, so other SAI students, but you'll be in a building and a neighborhood that's local. So you'll live with, other residents in your building will be Spanish or Florentine residents. So you get to that feeling of what it's like to live as a local, but with that comfort level of having students from the US in your apartment. So this slide just briefly shows you where our locations are. So as I mentioned earlier, most of our programs are in Italy. So we have 6 different sites there, so from somewhere as big as Milan or Rome to smaller cities like Florence and Siena, and then Paris and Barcelona. So in each of these cities, we have different host universities that we work with. So Florence University of the Arts, for example, Universidad Autónoma de Barcelona, and that would have classes taught in English or in the local language that you would attend. So we mentioned earlier the health and safety support. So as you can imagine, we've done a lot of reworking and kind of implementing new protocols for COVID-19 mitigation and being able to support students. We have students abroad with us right now. We had a few students with us abroad in the fall as well. So, we have experience working with students with all of these protocols in place. And students are still, able to attend class in person, do cultural activities while abiding by local regulations. As you may have seen, a lot of European countries have even stricter, masking and social distancing policies than here in the US. And so we've been able to work with students to make sure that, everyone is adhering to those and even going above and beyond. And those are all on our website. If you're on our homepage, there's a button that takes you to the COVID-19 updates that lists all the specific steps that we're taking, if you're looking at a summer or a fall 21 program. But I wanted to ask Brianna and Annalise as well, since they were abroad with us in spring 21, when everything started, kind of what support you received from SAI at that time. Brianna?
So it was really chaotic, as you can imagine, being in Italy, because that was like really the start of when everything started to, explode. And we had no idea how the severity of things, and like it wasn't in Florence, so it was a whole lot of like unknowns and questioning and doubting and stuff. And the people who were stationed in the city for our SAI program were super helpful in like kind of easing our minds, even though nobody really knew any of the answers. They were just really nice about it and sweet and caring. And we went there and we had to get back money from different like cultural activities that we were planning to do, and they were nice about it, and they helped my roommate get a taxi to the airport, because she was one of like the first people that left whenever it wasn't like mandatory that we were leaving, just out of abundance of caution. But she was super overwhelmed, and they said, okay, we'll get you a car to the airport, it'll all work out. And so they were really helpful in just easing our minds even when everyone had no idea what was going on.
Great. Well, how about in Barcelona, Annalise?
Yeah, in Barcelona, of course, Spain was kind of the second in line after it hit Italy. So we had a little bit more time to prepare, but SAI was great with all of the COVID protocols, and they were in constant communication with all of the students. And so it was really like as good of a situation as it could have been for a lot of students, because we knew that no matter what, we had the SAI staff there to support us and to help us, whether that be finding a flight home or making sure that we're safe in the city. So yeah, it was SAI made a very difficult situation with COVID be very at ease with all the students.
I'm glad to hear that. We obviously hate how it turned out for you guys. Wish you could have been able to finish your full semester, but glad that you felt supported and safe and were able to get home and finish out the semester remotely through your host universities abroad. So this slide just kind of details some of the things that help SAI stand apart. As you're researching your study abroad program, you're going to look at lots of different ones and they may kind of run together after a while. These are some of the things that I think help differentiate SAI. So we are a smaller organization. We have that very finite list of program locations, and we're not seeking to grow beyond that. We like having this specialty in Western Europe, where we can really focus and become experts on those locations, and our staff can be experts on those locations. And so through that, we really value a close personal relationship with students and getting to know students individually. That's pre-departure through your admissions counselor, and then once you're on site, the on-site staff really, wants you to stop by the office and chat and get to know you and things like that. Similarly, because of our locations and our long history there, we really value getting involved in the local community, making sure students have an opportunity to become familiar with the local culture, and get out of that kind of American bubble while you're there. So there's opportunities for volunteering, service, these excursions that we do, day trips and cultural activities, and other kind of opportunities like that. And then of course, throughout all of that, underneath it is this underpinning of student safety and health and support that is the most important thing on all of our programs. So those are a few things that I think help SAI kind of stand out. But Annalise, what would you say?
Yeah, similar to what I said earlier about trying to choose a program, SAI did stand out to me because they were so quick to respond, so easy at answering all of the questions that I had. And then once I got to Spain, it was really clear that the SAI staff were there did want to have a connection and a relationship with all the students who were there, which was awesome because they were so supportive. And yeah, I think SAI is the best program to study abroad with, but of course, maybe I'm biased. But yeah, they've just been fully supportive with every stage of the process.
Thanks.
I think SAI just did a really fantastic job, both like before, during, and after my program. Even now, we're talking on the alumni page, and I'm doing things like this. And when we were there, they planned so many really like just cool events above and beyond what they needed to do, because they, like any study abroad program, could just put together your housing and like the basics. But the first day we were there, we had orientation, and they had the police chief come in, and he talked to us about all the safety things. And then we had a dinner in a palace, like in a palace. It was so cool and totally above and beyond anything that anyone could ask for. And yeah, they were super responsive. Even when I was like a whole semester prior to when I studied abroad, I was looking at the website and the classes that are offered, and they were really responsive on me being like, if this class is offered in the spring, is it also offered in the fall? Because I was weighing when to go. So I just really think that they did a really great job. It's very, very well rounded before, during, after, so much support and care, you can tell.
Great. And yeah, you bring up a good point about our staff. So many of our staff have been with SAI a long, long time and are super familiar with all the class schedules of the host universities. So that's part of what they'll do, is that advising, where if you really think you're going to need a very specific class, reach out to our admissions team, and they can most likely tell you yes, that will be offered in fall 21, or that's not going to be offered again until spring 22 because they're so familiar with the course offerings and the course catalogs and prerequisites and courses that are most interesting. They can even talk to you about, students typically really like this class. This one is not as popular. So they're happy to have those kind of conversations with you. So that is about all the information that I had for you today. My email is Sarah. It's up on the screen here. The University of Louisville Study Abroad Office email is on the screen as well. I'm going to ask our ambassadors if they have any final words of wisdom or final tips that they want to share. Brianna, do you have anything you want to say?
My tip would be to do lots of research because I went in knowing very little. Now I know a lot, but I kind of went in blind. Obviously, if you're watching this presentation, you're already kind of on the ball more than I was because you're learning about what SAI does and different study abroad options. So that's my pre-departure tip. My post tip is just to, like, while you're there, do everything that you could possibly want to do. Yes, you need some time to like chill out. You don't want to like stress yourself out and exhaust yourself because we were all definitely running a whole lot, but definitely just take time to explore the city, even if you don't have a goal. My favorite day was one where I was just like walking around, my phone stopped working. I had literally no idea where I was. But I found all these really, really cool things and eventually ended up back at my apartment. So it wasn't problematic. It wasn't bad. It was just really wonderful just to see what was there and kind of go off the beaten path.
Wonderful. And Elise, what about you?
Yeah, there was one thing I forgot to mention on the slide before, but one thing that SAI offered that did stand out to me too was the Global Leadership Program. And that was a program that I was able to take part of in Spain. And so that was like really enhanced my academic experience. And it included volunteering every single week at an elementary school where I got to help teach English to Catalan speaking students. It involved writing a thesis statement about a current event or issue that was happening in Catalonia at that time. And so I wrote about the Catalan independence referendum. And then I also got to do like a cultural presentation for the SAI directors there, and just kind of continue that conversation and speak about like politics in that area, because for me that was my area of interest. And so yeah, that was another thing that stood out. My tips would just be to just go when you can. It's kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity to get to spend an entire semester in another country. And I can promise you that it's worth it. I've never heard anybody say that they regret studying abroad, but I've heard so many people tell me that their one regret in college is not studying abroad. So.
Yes, I have heard that regret a lot too. So definitely echo that. And we did have a question come in. So the question is, when do you think is the best time for students to go abroad? Like what year? So I'll answer that, and then I'll see if you guys have any thoughts on that too. What I usually tell students who have that question is it kind of depends on your major and your personal situation and like what classes you still need to graduate and where you are in your program. Because for some students, there may be classes in a sequence that you have to take on campus. And so that may determine when you're able to go abroad. But if you have some flexibility, I would say try and go the sooner the better, because I often see students who will just keep kind of putting it off, postponing going, and then end up graduating. And then they have that regret. But the earlier you can plan, the better. So, even starting your freshman year, tell your academic advisor. That way you and your academic advisor can talk about, oh, these are courses that I should set aside and I'll take those abroad and I'll go spring of my junior year or spring of my sophomore year or whatever. So planning early is key. Telling your academic advisor, getting them in the loop early is key, just for planning. But even if you haven't planned and you're a junior and you're graduating next year or something, there's still ways to make it work with short-term programs, Jan term, interim programs, things like that. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I went my junior year and I thought that worked really well, particularly just for my program. I can see that sophomore year would be kind of nice in the sense that like you still have more classes that you have to fulfill, so you could take a bigger range of things because you have less things checked off. But if you start planning early and you have this thought in your head that you're going to go, you can still like work around that definitely. It was my spring semester of my sophomore year. I decided that I really, really wanted to go abroad, and so I was looking to apply for the fall. And that turnaround was just like really way quicker than I thought it was going to be, like when applications were due and stuff like that. So I highly recommend at least starting applying and stuff more than a semester before you go. It's a lot more work and paperwork and just logistics than you would ever expect. But I think junior year is really nice. But when I was abroad, my one friend was a sophomore and she was totally fine. And my other girl I met was a senior and she was literally going to graduate like when she came back. Like it was that semester. But she just wanted to get it in and it worked for her. So really go whenever you can and just plan ahead.
I agree. I went spring of my sophomore year, and so that was great experience for me and worked out well with kind of my undergraduate plan. But again, it totally depends on the person, and I definitely do recommend starting to plan early. I was speaking to my advisor, I would say spring freshman year to get things planned, and then of course fall of my sophomore year I started really planning things, and then went abroad spring sophomore year. So.
Great. Well, as long as there's no more questions, I think that's about all the content that we had to share today. But again, you have our email addresses here. And if you want to be in touch with either Brianna or Annalise, I'm happy to put you in touch with them as well. Just shoot me an email and then I can pass it on to them so they can be in touch. Again, this is the SAI virtual fair homepage. So scan that and it'll take you to our website, which is just saiprograms.com. And yeah, thanks for joining. And we hope to see you and work with you and get you abroad soon. Thank you.